At the time I make this video, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU, is the most successful connected movie franchise in the history of movies, raking in a phenomenal $28 billion over the course of 30 connected films. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, which limited capacity in theaters over the last 2 years, that number might have even been higher. This video is in celebration of Marvel Studios and what they have accomplished along with their parent company, Disney. Welcome back to Comic Power. I'm your host, Comic Killer 72, and welcome to a special report. In this video, I'm going to rank all 30 MCU movies released so far. And by the way, I do have rules on how this list was compilated. See that in the description. And this list is my own personal list. If you don't like how I ranked all 30, please go to the comment section and put them in the order that you think they should be. And let's face it, even the so-called worst MCU films are better than the worst overall superhero films. The MCU never made anything as awful as Wonder Woman 1984, Catwoman, Green Lantern, or X-Men's Origins Wolverine. Please subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button as well. It will remind you when new videos drop. Number 30 is Thor: Love and Thunder, released in 2022. And this is disappointing because there were such high hopes for this movie after the success of Ragnarok. I think what hurt the film was it was trying too hard to be funny. Like, what is this? It looks like something out of an Old Spice commercial. Lady Sif loses her arm in battle, and the first thing Thor does is start telling jokes about it. The screaming goats are funny the first time, but after the 20th time, it gets real tiresome. Korg doesn't do anything but provide narration for this film. Natalie Portman as Jane Foster Thor is actually a bright spot in a very chaotic film that tries too hard. Number 29 is Thor Again with the Dark World, released in 2013. Probably the most forgettable movie in the MCU. The villain Malekith is supposed to look like this in the comics, and it made him look like this in the movie. That's awful. The film is boring, the attempted romance falls flat, the only thing worth watching is Loki. Loki always works, everything needs more Loki. Number 28 is Iron Man 2, released in 2010. The best part of this movie is when Tony testifies in front of the Senate very defiantly. And we get the introduction of Black Widow, which is also great. But then the film suffers from too many competing storylines. His relationship with Pepper, Rhodey getting his armor, his daddy issues, his comparator Justin Hammer, and his own technology is slowly killing him. And then there's Mickey Rourke as Whiplash, probably the worst villain in the history of the MCU. Number 27 is The Eternals from 2021. This film suffers from trying to cram too many unknown characters into one film. There's 10 of them, so they don't get enough screen time in this ensemble cast. And I think casual fans walk away from this not really knowing who the real villain is. I think it would have been a much better Disney Plus show so they could have fleshed out all the characters. So I don't think the movie is horrible. I just think it's the wrong format. A 2-hour and 30-minute movie isn't going to allow you to flesh all of this out when you're dealing with 10 unknown characters. I thought they should have used somebody like Professor Hulk as connecting tissue for the rest of the universe, where he accidentally discovers the Eternals doing his research. Speaking of the Hulk, number 26 is The Hulk from 2008. The story is okay, but I find the CGI pretty bad. Even for 2008 standards, it's substandard. And I never liked Ed Norton as Bruce Banner. He's a snarky type of actor, and Bruce Banner is supposed to be somebody who's more humble. Mark Ruffalo is a much better version of this character to me. The Hulk also has the distinction of being the lowest grossing movie that is not in the pandemic era. Number 25, Ant-Man the Wasp, released in 2018. Just after Infinity War. The good about this movie is that they gave the Wasp something to do, and she actually leads the action scenes. However, the reluctant villain in this story is Ghost, who's completely forgettable, and they probably should given more screen time to the Bill Foster character played by Lawrence Fishburne as Goliath. Like some type of tease of his costume or something. I'm sure his role will be bigger in Ant-Man 3, but Ant-Man 2 is completely forgettable. You can just skip it. Number 24 is Iron Man 3, first released in 2013. I find it ironic that Marvel's biggest solo star has the weakest trilogy. I didn't hate this film. It's got some great action sequences, but some of the things that are bad in it are really bad. It's definitely a Shane Black movie the way that Shane Black makes them, but it doesn't work for the MCU. The main villain in it is pretty forgettable, and that whole Mandarin twist is corny to me. And the scene where Tony gives the bad guys his home address and he's not prepared when they show up is nonsensical for the Iron Man character. He also has PTSD, and it appears that he's destroying his armors and is no longer Iron Man, but in the next Avengers films to come in Captain America Civil War, he's back being Iron Man again like this movie never happened. Number 23, Doctor Strange Part 1, released in 2016. As they always do, Marvel got it right in the casting with Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange. Those British actors are so good, and the movie succeeds because it accurately captures the Ditko, colorful, acid, trippy looking visuals that makes it feel like somebody spiked the punch when you drunk it. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. And Benedict Wong, playing Wong, is also another great British actor in his supporting role. Where the movie fails is forced comedy like name-dropping Beyonce. Hey, I love Bey, but they shouldn't be name-dropping her in this movie. The film is good, it's just not as good as it should be, and the forced humor was really cringy. Number 22 is Thor Part 1, released in
2011.
It's another one of those just okay movies that you don't have to see. Instead of embracing the Kirby comic bookish Thor, it looked like they were shooting for some epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings, and they failed at capturing that style. And just like in Thor: The Dark World, the forced romantic subplot just does not work. They have no chemistry. The movie's called Thor, but Loki's the most interesting character in it.
Number 21 is Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, released in 2017.
It pains my heart to put this so low because there's so many things I like about this film. The will they or won't they romantic subplot is working in this movie between Gamora and Star-Lord. The same thing with Mantis and Drax. The tortured scars on Nebula and Rocket Raccoon really make you love these characters even more. But the story fails in introducing the main plot, which is the villain of Ego being Peter's father, and it's just not a very interesting character. So everything is working in this film except for Ego, and that's a problem.
Number 20 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, released in 2021.
I didn't like this film as much as I thought I was going to like it, considering I was such a big fan of the comic back in the day when I was a kid. And don't get me wrong, the fight scenes like on the bus, I loved them. The betrayal of Wen Wu, aka the real Mandarin, I also liked that. I didn't like the idea of the Ten Rings being so cosmic in nature, at least known this early. The same thing with the dragons. I think it took too much away from the main character in the third act and kind of made it like a monster movie, like I was watching Godzilla or something. I think they should have kept him more street level as the master of Kung Fu in part 1 and then expand on the epic fantasy stuff in part 2 and part 3.
Number 19, Spider-Man Homecoming, released in 2017.
This is Peter Parker's first solo movie in the MCU, and it's good but not great. In saying that, Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man of all the people who've played him so far. The most interesting thing about this movie obviously is Michael Keaton giving a masterclass in acting. He's just wow in this film. The bad about this movie is that they make him way too dependent on Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. I get it, Tony is supposed to be his mentor, he's still pretty new at being a superhero, but he just worships Iron Man just a little bit too much and it takes away from the film.
Number 18 is Black Widow, first released in 2021.
I did like Black Widow, and it had the huge task of being the first post-pandemic movie released in theaters from Marvel. It includes some really great action scenes that I love, but what made this movie work so well is the connection between Natasha and Yelena. They really sold it to the audience that they care about each other like surrogate sisters. The reason I don't have this ranked higher is because the movie is too late. The events of the film take place in 2016, the film was released in 2021, and the character is dead in 2023. So it's kind of hard to pull for a character that you already know that's dead with a movie that's been shoehorned that should have came out 5 years ago. Some people were disappointed in how they used Taskmaster. It wasn't a big deal to me personally. If they want to do more Black Widow movies with Florence Pugh as the lead, then sign me up because I'm here for it. Number 17, Avengers: Age of Ultron, released in 2015. There's a lot of great things that happen in this movie, but it's been rated consistently as the worst Avengers movie so far. I was really excited to see the first full appearance of Wanda and Pietro, and Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch has been everything and more in what I imagined in this character. She's excellent. How they introduced the Vision and Paul Bettany playing him has also been great. And what I didn't like is, if you're going to introduce Quicksilver, why are you going to kill him so fast and so easy? I felt like scenes like the Hulkbuster armor were designed to sell toys instead of add something to the actual film's plot. And I think they made the villain a little too goofy and too jokey. He's an AI that's supposed to have some personality, but they made him a little too silly in my opinion. In saying that, the movie's still good when it should have been great. Number 16, Captain Marvel, first released in 2019. I was happy when this movie made $1 billion at the box office so it could silence the trolls who were trying to tank this film because they were not happy with the feminist stance of its lead star Brie Larson. But the reality is, it's a pretty solid origin film. We get introduced to the Skrulls for the first time in the MCU, and their ongoing war with the Kree is explained. This movie has some of the best CGI I've seen in the MCU. Brie has been busy in the gym getting bulked up for part 2. Can't wait.
Number 15 is The Ant-Man, first released back in 2015.
By far, the most silly and ridiculous franchise in the Marvel Universe, and it doesn't shy away from it. It double downs on its ridiculousness. And Paul Rudd is perfectly cast for this role. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym as well. Evangeline Lilly doesn't get much to do in this movie, but the end credit with her suit is a big payoff. Using Michael Pena to explain the exposition in a hilarious way works so well. The movie is just a very fun action comedy heist. Its only failure is having a generic, forgettable villain with powers that are similar to the hero, something Marvel has done way too much.
Number 14, Spider-Man: Far From Home, released in 2019.
This is a very fun movie to watch as we see Peter readjust to his life post-blip on a school road trip to Europe where things go bonkers. We're introduced to Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, which really works, and the chemistry between Tom Holland and Zendaya is electric. There's a natural attraction there that feels like they're dating in real life. This movie will always be fun to watch, but like Homecoming, it's still too dominated by the shadow of Iron Man. Giving a superpowered teenager a high-tech suit is one thing, but giving him a set of glasses that can call in a drone strike at will is just jumping the shark to me, even for a comic book
book movie. I'm probably overthinking this though. Number 13, Captain America, The First Avenger, released in 2011. In terms of canon, this is the first MCU movie in terms of order. And I'll admit, the first time I saw this movie, I found it to be slow moving and kind of boring. But when I go back and watch it, I appreciate how they incorporated the Howling Commandos. The scene where he's turned into a super soldier with Peggy Carter really works. And Captain America made his debut in comics in 1941, punching Hitler. So recreating that in a campy way was a good touch. I would still say at this point that Captain America has the best trilogy of all Marvel's heroes. It all begins here, and it's better than you remember. Number 12, Doctor Strange Part 2, also known as the Multiverse of Madness. First released in 2022, they put this in the hands of Sam Raimi, and he did a knockout job, creating an epic action, horror, science fiction magic film. Picking up with the Scarlet Witch as the villain right after WandaVision really worked. Introducing America Chavez in live action for the first time as the MacGuffin of the film also worked. It introduces the Illuminati and then kills them real quick. Gotta love it. Number 11, Thor Ragnarok, released back in 2017.
After the first two Thor movies were not so well received, Marvel decided to go ahead and change course and borrow influence from the Guardians of the Galaxy and turn it into a space action comedy, overseen by an indie director from New Zealand. On paper, that sounds crazy, but it actually worked. Kate Blanchett as Hela is a win. Tessa Thompson was excellent as Valkyrie. Using Fire Lord Surtur as part of the plot was excellent. Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster, loved it. They even found a way to incorporate the Planet Hulk storyline. Yes, they made Thor funnier, but they also made him smarter and not fall for Loki's tricks so easily that you can see coming from a mile away.
Number 10, Spider-Man No Way Home, released in 2021.
Is this just a gimmicky fan service movie, or is this a great Spider-Man movie on its own merit? Hey, why can't it be both? Let's admit it though, seeing all three of the men who played Spider-Man live action and movies together in one film is pretty cool. And giving them redemption arcs so they can fix the things they failed at is also nice. Like the Andrew Garfield version saving MJ when he couldn't save Gwen in his universe. It also made us feel empathy for the villains in this movie. The multiverse opens up endless possibilities of what they could do in the future.
What we need next is to see Spider-Man fight Venom in live action again and do it right this time. Number 9, Iron Man Part 1, released back in 2008.
And the MCU starts here. It really showed that Marvel knew what they were doing in casting by bringing in Robert Downey Jr. as the lead as Tony Stark and not dealing with Tom Cruise's massive ego or Nick Cage's goofiness. They did an incredible job of following the origin from the comics and giving us the Mark I armor. And Joaquin Phoenix was the first actor to win the Best Actor Oscar for a comic book movie, but it should have been Robert Downey Jr. He was just incredible as Iron Man at such epic proportions. I didn't think Terrence Howard was right for Rhodey, so when they replaced him, I was happy with that. And this film started that trend of having a villain that has a similar power to the hero, which Marvel used way too much, but I'm nitpicking. I absolutely love this film, and I go back and watch this at least once a year. And wait for it. Boom.
Number 8, Captain America Civil War, released back in 2016.
Considering all the major players are in it except for Hulk and Thor, you can call this Avengers 2.5, but I call it an orgy of comic book source goodies, being adapted perfectly to film that I can nerd out to. We get the first live action appearance of Black Panther, Crown Prince T'Challa, and the first appearance of Spider-Man in live action in the MCU, played by Tom Holland. And the airport fight scene is one of the best things ever in life. The plot involving Baron Zemo pulling strings makes no real sense, but we really don't care because we're having so much fun. And like Cap said, I can do this all day. Sure can. Number 7, Black Panther 2, also known as Wakanda Forever, released in 2022.
This film had the impossible task of trying to replace Chadwick Boseman, aka King T'Challa.
And although he can never really truly be replaced, with a heavy heart, we have to continue the story. And Letitia Wright delivers a monumental performance as the new Black Panther, and even paying homage to Chad at the premiere with this swipe. There were even doubts if this would work because she's a very small woman, but then she showed up like this and silenced all of her critics.
We got the first live appearance of Namor the Submariner.
He has an Aztec Mayan type of background. Marvel did a fantastic job of interpreting this character and making him a real badass like he's supposed to be. And Marvel used heavy inspiration from the comics where Shuri becomes a Black Panther. And look at these art sales from the pages of comics. They were a big inspiration on the final battle in Act 3 of the movie. So great job to Letitia for holding this together as the lead. Angela Bassett deserves her Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in this movie, no lie. Nakia, M'Baku, and Okoye had very strong supporting story arcs. The mid-credit scene revealing T'Challa's son was inspiring. And Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams was tremendous. Number 6, Avengers Endgame, released in 2019. You would think this movie wouldn't work and it would implode because there's a lot of things that people don't like about it. Like in his grief, making Thor a fat slacker dude.
mind, or taking the action hero out of the Hulk and turning him into Professor Hulk, whose key mission is to explain what's going on to the audience. And of course, the time travel plot, because all time travel movies have plot holes, but it overcomes that because we're so vested in finding out what happens to the Avengers and how to recover after the snap. And we get one of the best third act climax action scenes in the history of cinema. And Tony Stark, the character that the MCU based its foundation on, going out and sacrificing himself like a G. It's just so much fun. You gotta love this movie. Number 5, Black Panther, released in 2018. There's just so much going on for this movie in terms of Afrofuturism, the subtext of black nationalism, and what responsibility you have to help others if you're well off and they're not. It's a very deep movie. If you're just looking at the surface of it, it's just a very entertaining film. It's the highest grossing movie of all time with a majority black cast, and it was the first comic book movie of any kind that was nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. Until Thanos made his first full appearance in Infinity War, I believe that Killmonger was the best villain in MCU history. Unfortunately, we lost Chadwick Boseman in real life, and it's going to be with a heavy heart watching these movies going forward in the future. Wakanda Forever was great, but the original Black Panther was special. R.I.P. Chad. Number 4, Avengers Part 1, released in 2012. This is the epic fulfillment of Marvel taking its time, building its independent solo characters by themselves, and building up to this monumental foundation, which is the Avengers. And at the time it was released, it was the only comic book film not named Batman to make $1 billion at the box office. At 10 years old, this movie holds up incredibly well. The Avengers were formed in the pages of Marvel Comics in 1963, with Loki being the key villain. So it was only fitting in the live action movie that he would be the villain in this as well. When the Avengers theme plays and they all form in that circle for the third act of the film, when they're about to go into battle, it just warms your heart with excitement. I love this film. It's a remarkable achievement. Number 3, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, released in 2014. Cap probably has the best overall trilogy of all of the Avengers solo members, and the Winter Soldier is the crown jewel. It's basically an action, espionage, spy thriller disguised as a comic book movie. The action is more grounded like a Nolan Batman film, so anyone that likes action movies that doesn't even like comic book films could like this movie. The chemistry between Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan as friends, foes, and then friends again really works. What can you say about ScarJo? Her solo movie would have been better if it came out right after Civil War. Number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 1, released in 2014. This was Marvel's 10th release, and I'll be honest, this is the one I thought they were going to fail at, because no one had heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they had all these quirky characters like a gun-loving raccoon and a tree man, and it can only repeat his name. This is supposed to crash and burn, but it didn't. It was a mega success, and it even outperformed Amazing Spider-Man in the summer of 2014. This was Marvel ascending to the throne as king and forced Sony to stop making Spider-Man movies on their own and bring him into the MCU and just partner with him. Guardians works because the lead character of Peter Quill is basically a mix of Indiana Jones meets Han Solo, but with the ridiculousness of, say, Galaxy Quest thrown in. This is one of those films that I always come back to and love it even more, because I am Groot. And last but not least, number 1 is Avengers Infinity War, released in 2018. What can you say? This is tragic like an opera and might be the best science fiction action movie of all time. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy where the bad guy actually wins. So you could compare this to The Empire Strikes Back from Star Wars. It's the first comic book film I had ever seen where grown men were actually crying in the theater when their favorite characters died. In my opinion, Marvel was able to successfully adapt Thanos and make him on the level of, say, Darth Vader in terms of pop culture impact. Infinity War was a great adaptation of Jim Starlin's Thanos Quest, a 2-issue graphic novel series, which showed the journey and how Thanos was able to get the 6 Infinity Stones, and the Infinity Gauntlet, a 6-issue miniseries which broke down the battle between him and Earth's heroes. The Infinity War movie is such an epic tragedy that it doesn't even need music to boost the pacing of this 3-hour movie. It uses 2 songs in the whole movie: the Rubber Band Man when the Guardians of the Galaxy show up, and the theme of Black Panther when they go to Wakanda. I've never seen anything like that before that worked in a movie, and it absolutely does, because it shows the bleakness of what's going on here. It's got some of the most quotable lines in MCU history as well. I am Groot, I am Steve Rogers. You should have went for the head. Get this man a shield. I absolutely love this film. It will hold up forever as an epic achievement in cinema. And in my opinion, the best of 30 MCU movies so far. You know the drill. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, give it a thumbs up, and share these videos on social media so others learn about the Comic Power channel. While you're here, be sure to look through my archives and look at some of my previous Thanos videos, like where I predicted in advance which characters were most likely to die in Infinity War. Go back and watch that and see how many I got right. And then of course the video where I make the claim that Thanos has eclipsed Darth Vader as the most popular sci-fi action villain. And be sure to go into the comment section and rank all 30 movies the way you think they should be ranked according to you. For now, this is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying bye bye.